Will you talk about this aftermath, this experience you went through?
Ooh, I'll talk a little bit about it, but I went to a very, very dark place. I was in, when I describe it to people, it's like a pit, and I was like clawing my way out of it. But everything I grabbed, I would just slip, nothing, I couldn't grab onto anything to pull myself out. And I was just desperate for anything that would get me out of this feeling of I was part of everything and I'm back here, and all of the humaning that we do that could be negative was just flooding me. And I was just so overwhelmed. And this body was definitely overwhelmed. And I started doing yoga. I had a dear friend who would come over and do yoga with me, and no inversions because my head can go lower than my waist and all these like parameters. But we started doing yoga 3 times a week. And after a few months of that, I finally went to a therapist and felt comfortable talking enough. But even now, I'm still suffering from a little bit of aphasia. And
Tell the audience what that means, please.
oh yeah, yeah. It's when you're looking for a word and you can't find it. So instead, I'm wrapping all these words around something that I'm trying to portray, and I end up talking a lot more than this one perfect word for this perfect moment. And yeah, that's really frustrating. But it is what it is. But anyway, so I went to a therapist, and then I kept doing yoga, and I started doing yoga every day. I finally got inverted. I finally was able to bring my head below my waist and do, studio yoga. So I started doing that, and I did that for a long time, like sometimes 2 classes a day, because that was the only time that I had to focus on my body and, really be in the moment, because balancing on one foot while you're trying to reach your hand to the ceiling and all of that was a reprieve from all of this darkness surrounding me. And so focusing on my body like that really was a boon for my recovery. And then that went on and on and on for a few years. And then I don't know which one happened first, but I randomly walked up to my husband and said, "Do you want to have a kid?" And he was like, "Sure, we can try." And I was like, "Okay, let's just try it and see. Let's just see." So we started that, didn't really think it through, but there was that. And at the same time, I went into this yoga studio that I had been a part of for a long time. And this woman was talking about this workshop that she did. And she said, trauma yoga. And I was like, what? What is that? And she started talking about trauma yoga. And I got very interested in that. Like, I wasn't interested in being a yoga teacher, because for me, the last thing that I wanted was, because I felt like being a performer was me being that little organ grinder's monkey slapping the cymbals together. Like, I don't want to perform and have that audience give me their opinion of what I'm putting up there. So I didn't want to be a yoga teacher, but the idea that I could help people get through this with their bodies was so fascinating to me. So then I started deep diving into that. And I got my yoga teacher training, got pregnant in the middle of that, had my child. We all packed up and drove with cloth diapers. This is so insane. Drove to Massachusetts with a 6-month-old in cloth diapering. And I got my first dose of trauma sensitive yoga. And then I just wanted to eat it up and swim around in it. And so I did. I went and got yoga sensitive trained, and then I got somatic attachment trained, and now I'm in body mind centering training, and I'm just ravenous for the body and its power. You know, our bodies have a lot of resources that we're not tapping into as much as maybe we could be. At least I am. You know, I love learning and dealing with the body and working with other people in community to try and find recovery from this current state of the world and what's personally going on. And I've learned a lot about trauma. And although the stroke is considered acute trauma, and there's also psychological trauma, and there's a bunch of trauma in between both of those, but trauma lands in the body. So our bodies have patterns, and I'll just use posture right now as one because it's easy access and I'm currently studying about it. But you know, we have a postural pattern, a pattern of the way we carry ourselves, right? So this pattern is probably ingrained early on, so that way we don't have to think about it anymore. There are ways to alter that postural pattern, but there's a perspective that the nervous system is responsible for the muscles surrounding the skeleton. So that postural pattern, you kind of have to hack into the nervous system in order to make that change happen. That makes sense?
Yes.
So trauma definitely hacks the nervous system and you create new patterns. And those patterns might be behavioral patterns, that might be physical, structural patterns like postural patterns, or it could be, you know, it shifts a lot of the patterning of your physical body and your reactivity to stimulus. So something comes in and your body will most probably act before it gets to your brain. You know, this is a little bit of knowledge that people like, but it's that our cognitive brain, the front part of our brain that that judges situations and I don't know, we pretty much worship it, but it's logical. It tries to make sense out of things. That part of our brain generally takes in somewhere around 40 things per second. That is a ton of information that our brain is trying to process. The back part of our brain, the limbic part of our brain that does all of that's picking up on senses like the feel of the room, the color of the paint, the smell, you know, everything around us, that takes in 11 million things per second. There's no way that our cognitive brain could process 11 million things per second, and you would be, you would you would not be able to function if you had to process all that. But the idea is kind of going back there into the limbic part of your brain and noticing what is what is what your brain is sensing in order to kind of repattern the front of your brain that's constantly in this judgment trying to make sense out of things.
So is this how trauma yoga is different from other types of yoga?
Well, it's hard to say. Well, I mean, trauma sensitive yoga has um, its own structure, and studio yoga has another. But trauma sensitive yoga is based off of the idea that empowerment is key. Giving people choices for what they do with their bodies is really different from studio yoga, where they're like, okay, bring 1 foot forward, lift up your arms. If you want this to be more intense, you can pull your feet isometrically together, energetically together. You know, that type of yoga is kind of coercing you to do this way. Trauma sensitive yoga is more like, if you want to, you could bring 1 foot forward. Maybe you could bend your front knee if that lands in your body, or you could stand right here like this. If you want, you could bring your arms up, or maybe you have another way of holding your arms, you know, and it's very permission, choice making, that type of engagement with people. And also they're very big on interoception. So what is happening inside your body? So as if we're doing this foot forward thing, right? This lunge-ish thing, right? So you're bringing 1 foot forward, you could bend your front knee. You might feel a sensation in the back of your leg, or maybe in the front of your bended leg, or somewhere else. But just kind of trying to cue people into, what does this feel like inside your body while you're doing this motion, right? So that is, and that's why, I don't know if this says this on my website, but I often say that trauma sensitive yoga is the skeleton by which I've built my body of work. So it's hard for me to say what I do is trauma sensitive yoga, because I'm trained in other modalities. So I can't just isolate one or the other. And that's why I call what I do moving meditation, because yoga also has a connotation that you're going to come in and you're supposed to wear a sports bra and you're going to turn your body into a pretzel and, you know, and sweat. And none of those things are going to happen with me. Yeah. There's studio yoga for that. And then what I do is trying to help people get into their bodies and notice their own patterning, and maybe gently, compassionately changing those patterns.
What was it about? So from trauma yoga, you moved on to somatic awareness, that kind of thing. What were you, it sounds like you were still searching for more. What did you find in your next 1 or 2 certifications that was missing from trauma yoga?
I just, first of all, I'm fascinated by the body. So there's that. So I'm just, it's not that anything's missing. I just want to know everything about our bodies and its relationship with the our emotional, maybe I should say it like this. We have a physical body, an emotional body, a spiritual body, a all of these parts of us. How do they all work together, and how much the physicality plays a role in that? So there's that. But then also, I find with the people that I engage with, um, one thing may not work. And so having a big toolbox has been really beneficial. And like I'm interested in our embryonic growth, like how we made our heart. It's fascinating. And getting people kind of cued into that can be easier for people whose bodies been have been a little bit vilified.
So you're talking about people whose body images have been vilified, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, like, my body had a stroke. I in no way was expecting this, and my body did that to me. Whatever that means, I had very little say in that happening. My body did that to me. So I could easily see my body as a place that is not safe for me, and
And so you are seeking to help people who have that experience find safety and acceptance of their body and in their body again.
yes, yes. But you don't have to have that experience to have an overwhelmed body. In this day and age,
Yeah.
it is very easy to have an overwhelmed body.
You don't have to tell me. I haven't had a stroke.
Yeah,
Knock on wood.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's we come from a very overwhelming place. I don't know about other places in the world. I don't live there. I don't have that experience, but America is a very overwhelming place to be right now. And how do we take a breath, emotional breath, in order to have the capacity to deal with that overwhelming world and find space to find that creativity and imagination that's needed to deal with this. Like, in order for us to change, we have to have time and space to find that creative juice that's so needed right now in order for us to create change.